was the only team that lost inter-squad games. They were just brutal.
If they could have got federal funds in 1968, they could have got them. That's how bad that football team was.
We're 2-7. What the difference does it make?
I remember going to warm-ups and thinking, "What? How much we're gonna lose by today?"
Throughout NFL history, there have been plenty of terrible teams and embarrassing moments.
Loses the football. It's picked up by Jim Marshall, who's running the wrong way.
This countdown is a celebration of the most dreadful.
If you didn't think it could get any more ugly, it is.
What is this?
Grotesque.
They're killing me, Whitey. They're killing me.
And putrid teams to ever take the field.
Oh, I was a part of one of those teams. Oh, yeah, those were great times, great times.
We couldn't do diddly poo offensively. We couldn't make a first down. We couldn't complete a pass. We sucked.
Anyone could go 4-12 or 5-11. Go 0-16. That's an accomplishment.
I knew we weren't ready to play football today.
Don't get the wrong idea. Our show is not all gloom and doom. Sometimes a team has to be really bad before they can be really good.
Worst to first. How sweet it is.
Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse, Mickey Mouse.
If you like football filled with fantastic follies and plenty of monkey business, then this is the countdown for you.
Normally, we don't like to go negative on this program, but there's winners and losers, and whoever's on this show, boy, they lost a lot.
The number 10 worst team of all time, the 1990 Patriots.
Putrid. They were like bad fish.
The 1990 Patriots stumbled out of the gate and eventually tumbled to a 1-15 record.
Sets up, rolls to the near side, looks, throws to the sideline. Wide open is Billy Brooks. Billy's got it. 15, 10, 5, touchdown.
Defensively, they were just a terrible team. They gave up 29 rushing touchdowns. They only scored 4. I think that's one of the most lopsided statistics I've ever seen for any team.
Now, you can't get a ticket for any of these games. People forget, in those days, there was very little interest here. They were actually discussing moving the franchise out of New England.
The franchise was in complete tatters. It was a complete disaster.
The only real objective that we've talked about is everyone make his best contribution every snap.
When the losing began, the effort from Rust's players corroded faster than an old Schwinn bicycle left out in the rain.
I remember they came sort of around mid-season. They came to Philadelphia. Their lack of effort was just appalling.
Cunningham on a broken play is running across the 50.
And you kind of see Randall got to the sidelines and was expecting somebody to kind of run him out of bounds, and he just kept running and running. When I saw that day, I just said, this team's not going to win another game.
Hello, I'm Victor Kiam. I was a dedicated blade shaver until my wife bought me this Remington microscreen shaver.
I think he liked the visibility. I think he liked the prestige. Trouble is, when you're owner of a 1-15 NFL team, that's not the best thing in the world.
I'm not sure what Victor Kiam's goal was here. Should not have owned a football team.
I was delighted and impressed. So impressed, I bought the company.
Kiam never enjoyed the same success he had in the razor business and probably wished the Patriots came with a money-back guarantee. He sold the team in 1991, and New England didn't post a winning season until 1994.
30, 20, 15, 10, 5. Good night, Irene. Touchdown, Washington Redskins.
The Bears are who we thought they were. And that's why we took the damn field. Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their.
Many of the worst teams in history have put together impressive losing streaks. Some dropped so many, they had fans heading for the exits.
Pass the vomit bag. I think I'm going to throw up.
Between 2001 and 2003, the Detroit Lions lost a record 24 straight road games, making them realize there's no place like home.
We can't cover anybody. We got to get that fixed.
How about those missed tackles? 3 guys.
The 1981 Colts lost 14 consecutive games and gave up an NFL record 533 points.
If you didn't think it could get any more ugly, it is.
The 69 Steelers lost 13 in a row, and the 01 Panthers lost 15 straight.
Wow. Jeez. And unfortunately, there's no mercy rule in the NFL.
But when it comes to losing streaks on our countdown, size doesn't matter.
The number 9 worst team of all time, the 1968 Eagles.
The 68 season was probably the darkest in the history of Philadelphia football, which is saying a lot given the history of that team.
If they could have got federal funds in 1968, they could have got them. That's how bad that football team was.
The Eagles only scored 3 rushing touchdowns all year. A bankrupt owner and a myriad of injuries led to dismal play as the club lost its first 11 games of the season.
All the preaching you do on that play, they don't even look for it. Never should happen. Never should happen.
And we had a lot of good football players. We just, good football players don't make a good team. Good teams make a good team. You know, people play together. We never really understood that.
Part of the problem was head coach Joe Kuharich, who struggled to communicate with his players and the press.
He said things in very convoluted ways that left you scratching your head.
Boy, the gears in that guy's mind didn't mesh for a long time, I'll tell you that.
The first half of the game went one way, and then the second half of the game totally turned around. Joe said, well, the second half was a horse from a different fire department. He was not skilled with the language, and he was not very skilled in handling people.
Planes flying over with the banners. Joe must go. It became a circus there for a while. I mean, it was crazy.
Resentment of our number 9 worst team intensified when Kuharich was awarded a 15-year contract. Some of the fans resorted to death threats because there was no end in sight.
Got to be game time. Kuharich could be one end of the bench, and everybody'd migrate to the other end. He finally said, what's wrong? He said, the guy may not be a good shot.
A modern NFL record had been set. The Eagles had been beaten for the 11th consecutive time.
The Eagles fans are now beginning to really embrace the idea that the Eagles are going to lose them all, and they're going to get O.J. Simpson. Just at that moment, they start to win.
You always want them to win. And then when you want them to lose, they can't lose.
The fans who were frustrated up to that point anyway now become doubly frustrated because the Eagles have now won 2 utterly meaningless games that are not going to save their season. All they've done is they've blown the chance to draft O.J. Simpson.
The fans' frustration finally boiled over during the last game of the year in an incident that has become legendary in Philadelphia sports history.
They booed Santa Claus and then pelted him with snowballs. I mean, who would boo Santa Claus? You're looking forward to get your presents. That's how despondent the Philadelphia fans were over that football team.
At least they were into the game.
The number 8 worst team of all time, the 1989 Cowboys.
You would watch the 89 Cowboys, and you just kind of cringed. You said, this team does not belong on an NFL field.
The Eagles are having them for lunch and dinner and maybe the snack on the plane flying home. They are devouring them today.
In the late 1980s, Big D stood for disaster. Things were so bad the Cowboys' new owner fired the only coach they ever had, Tom Landry.
You dressed for the occasion? Pretty sharp, too. The funeral?
We must win. We will win. Win is the name of the game.
Jimmy Johnson came in with such a fanfare and so much success at the University of Miami, but he had never coached at the pro level.
He didn't have a very good team left over from Tom Landry's days. He inherited the first pick in the draft, so he was able to draft Troy Aikman.
Already a lightning rod, Johnson created controversy when he also drafted Steve Walsh, his quarterback from Miami. He then incited full-scale panic by trading his best player, Herschel Walker.
Hand it to Walker, coming left. In for the touchdown.
Well, he came up with this idea that we're going to trade Herschel Walker for like 5 players, but we're going to attach draft picks to each of those players. And if we decide not to keep the player, we get the draft pick.
I didn't want my assistant coaches falling in love with these players because I knew I was going to cut them at the end of the year. I wouldn't let them start any of those players, even though they were better than what we were starting, because I knew I was going to exercise my option to take the draft picks.
By benching his best players, Johnson sabotaged the season, dooming our number 8 worst team to a 1-15 season.
Any quarterback has struggled in his rookie year typically, and so for Troy Aikman, it was no different in Dallas, plus he was surrounded by a really bad team.
They are making mincemeat of the Dallas offensive line.
I didn't know how bad the Cowboys were.
Nick Lowry kicks off for the Chiefs. His leg's going to get tired.
In 1989, the Cowboys scored the fewest points in the NFL. Unable to hold on to the ball, the young team fumbled through the season.
It takes a while to learn how to win a football game when you're a young team starting out.
Aikman studied in the school of hard knocks.
He wore Clyde Simmons and Reggie White one afternoon. I mean, he put them on at noon, and he took them off about 3:15.
Aikman looking, he goes again!
They just beat the living hell out of him, and he just took it.
I remember walking off the field and thinking, I don't know what it takes to win in this league. You know, I was 0-11 as a starter. I mean, the team won 1 game, but I wasn't even the quarterback for that game.
They beat the Redskins 13-3. Steve Wallace was their quarterback. And in their only win that season, Steve Wallace completed 10 of 30 passes. And that was the high point of their year.
Here's your 0-16. The ball game is over, and Jimmy Johnson is one happy man.
In spite of 1989, Johnson chose Aikman over Walsh and used his extra draft picks to build a champion around him.
Jimmy Johnson's taken his team from the absolute worst to the absolute best.
He obviously should send a royalty check to the Minnesota Vikings every year.
There were several dreadful teams that were a little too good to break the top 10 on our list. Here are a few favorites that just missed the cut.
Don't talk to me, all right? Knock it off!
Thanks in part to their prima donna quarterback, the 2000 Chargers won only a single game.
Leaf steps up, throws over the middle, pass intercepted again. Ryan Leaf threw a miserable pass.
San Diego got the last laugh when they dumped the dud and used their first-round pick to land LT.
Left side, and he will gallop into the end zone. Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Finding the right quarterback can be tough.
He can't find anybody. He may have to eat it, and he does.
The 1966 Giants tried 3 of them and still couldn't overcome their defense.
One of the worst defenses ever. They scored 40 or more points in 2 consecutive games and lost them both.
Well, you can rub this dime into your arm. If you get it just the right way, you can actually rub it into your arm so that it'll disappear.
Not even sleight of hand could hide Lou Holtz's deficiencies as a pro head coach. Holtz only lasted 13 games as the 1976 Jets finished 3-13.
I called it the Lou Holtz era. That's the E-R-R-O-R.
But take heart, Lou. Your squad wasn't the worst Jets team of all time.
The number 7 worst team of all time, the 1996 Jets.
They were just bad in almost every aspect of the game.
They were defeated before they went out on the field. I remember going to warm-ups and thinking, well, how much we're going to lose by today?
Brisker, shovel pass. Intercepted! Mills with the interception! He could go! He's at the 15, 10, 5. Mills has a touchdown! Shovel this. We got it wrong. It's wrong.
For the 1996 Jets, the entire season was one big mistake. No team turned the ball over more, and the 454 points they surrendered were the most in franchise history.
Is there a mercy rule in football? It should be. We got a long way to go.
Dan Marino damn near bust the clock on us. He put up like 50 points.
He looked like a kid in Homo
Boy, look at that pass right there. Boy, you ain't caught it. Yeah, that was awesome.
The Jets have opened up a lead, but again, nothing's safe with Dan Marino on the other sideline.
Coincidentally, the Jets' troubles began 2 years earlier against Marino. The future Hall of Famer overcame an 18-point deficit and capped the comeback with one of the most memorable plays in NFL history.
I believe Marino is saying I'm going to spike it with 32, 31, 30 seconds to go.
Marino takes the snap from center. He's looking. He throws. Touchdown, Dolphins. Mark Ingram. They caught the Jets off guard on that play.
Place is stunned. Rightfully so.
Marino just undressed the Jets.
That's one of the worst moments in Jet history. The fake spike fittingly begins with a four-letter word that starts with F.
I think that was the beginning of an end for the New York Jets.
The Jets never recovered and went on to lose 33 of their next 37 games. The fake spike play was a bitter reminder that the Jets hadn't won anything since Super Bowl III. Owner Leon Hess made a change and gave his new head coach total control.
I'm 80 years old. I want results now. And Rich Kotite, in my opinion, is one of those men that can make a winning team out of the Jets.
I'm not a genius. I don't have all the answers.
Not even Einstein could explain all the reasons for New York's losing ways. No matter how hard they tried, nothing seemed to go right.
Hello? Are you guys there? Just push it in, right? All right, give me weak right. Push the button. Push the button. I got to remember to push the button. Let's go fast, 40.
And think about lack of discipline and the lack of preparation. You're not going to win many games.
One of the most questionable decisions the Jets made occurred at the 1995 draft when they passed on Warren Sapp.
Warren Sapp. Yeah. Warren Sapp. Sapp is the man.
The New York Jets select tight end from Penn State, Kyle Brady.
The worst pick since last year. I think Kotite was an outside end. He feels out.
What is Kotite thinking about?
I'm giving up my season tickets.
Let it go.
I was not fired. I'm not quitting. But, and you're 3-13 and you're 1-14, a change has to be made.
I'm starting to think you're stupid. That's what loses. That's why you won at 15, actually, right there.
When Bill Parcells came in after Richie Kotite, the first thing that he did was he brought in discipline.
Catch the ball. Don't tell me about that, son. Get back. Get back. Set up. Set up. Good. Score. There you go.
In just 2 years, Parcells transformed our number 7 worst team into winners, guiding them to the AFC Championship game, forever making the 96 squad a punchline in Jets history.
The number 6 worst team of all time, the 1980 Saints.
This rack here, this is all the greatest plays of the Cowboys history. Yeah. These are all the greatest plays in the Raider history. Mm-hmm. And here's this rack here. These are all the greatest plays in the Saints history. And this can here contains all the great accomplishments of the New Orleans Saints.
For most of their history, the Saints produced more headaches than miracles.
It sucked. It stunk. That's as simple as I can tell you.
No way you can explain it.
And I just think when I wrote, damn it!
We always wanted the New Orleans Saints on our schedule because we would just check that one off, baby. We're going to win that one.
The story of their worst team, the 1980 squad, begins in 1979.
Because with 3 weeks left to go in the 79 season, the Saints were tied for first place in the Western Division. They were beating the Oakland Raiders 35-14, and the Raiders scored 28 unanswered points and beat them in that game. And they wound up finishing 8-8. I don't think they ever really recovered from that.
We get ready to start the 80 season, and all of a sudden, they say, okay, this is going to be the Saints' year. We're thinking we're going to be pretty good, too, and now we're losing. and then we lose again and lose again.
Before coming to New Orleans, Dick Nolan was a highly regarded coach. But in 1980, he crashed and burned with a 1-15 record.
That was really a dreadful team.
We felt like all we had to do was put on our uniforms and we were going to win the game.
That was the team that blew the 35-7 lead to the 49ers.
At the 5, breaks the tackle, goes the outside, touchdown 49ers.
It wasn't one guy breaking down. They took turns screwing up. They kept finding ways to lose.
I never liked that logo on the side of their helmet. If you hit them a little extra hard, maybe that logo will fly off. I don't even know what the hell that logo is.
The fleur-de-lis is the city of New Orleans' official symbol.
For the New Orleans faithful, the 1980 Saints were a symbol of misery.
He won't even watch anymore. So even Gumbo's given up.
Now, that was the year fans introduced the paper bag to the watching of NFL football games. So bad that you can't even watch, although we'll poke eye holes just in case somebody does something.
They were 0-11. They were playing a Monday night game at home against the Rams. That was the night that the paper bags came out.
There is one of the Aints. They don't want anyone to know they're identified with their football team.
The bagheads were lovable. They were funny. They put Aints on the top. Only New Orleans. Aints.
Yeah, we're getting very elaborate, our sack folks.
There was plenty of sacking that day, but surprisingly, Archie Manning didn't get the worst of it.
The Saints lost the game to the Rams 27-7. It wasn't even that close. And the next day, Dick Nolan was fired as head coach.
And I think Dick Nolan, to be honest with you, was relieved that he was fired. He couldn't go on like that.
3 weeks later, our number 6 worst team finally found some relief with a win.
In week 15, ironically with the wind blowing about 45 miles an hour through Shea and snowflakes coming down, Tommy Myers sealed it with an interception.
The team came back, and they may have had 200 or 300 people at the airport. That game in New York, it was really their Super Bowl. I don't think they'll have a reunion.
The number 5 worst team of all time, the 1960 Cowboys.
They were an expansion team in a league that wasn't very generous in setting up that expansion.
The AFL was created. A team was put in Dallas called the Texans. It was owned by Lamar Hunt. So the NFL immediately put their own team in there to compete against the Texans. And the Cowboys were created in such a rush they didn't even get to be part of the college draft that year.
They basically said, we'll allow you to have an expansion draft and you can pick everybody else's leftovers.
We're really talking about having to play with cast-offs and wannabes.
That started it off on the wrong foot.
Bobby Lane gets his wing warmed up for the Steelers. Bobby hits Buddy Dial, and his Cowboy defender bites the dust as Dial dashes in to score.
With a roster full of misfits, the Cowboys went winless in their first year. The offense was dismal, scoring only 177 points all season.
I believe if their opponent hadn't showed up 12 weeks in a row, they might have gone 6-6. This is the only team that lost inter-squad games. They were just brutal.
The thinking of the organization was, we know we're not going to be very good. Let's just score some points and hopefully bring people into the Cotton Bowl.
In this position, he's a key to the screen because his timing must be perfect.
Necessity is often the mother of invention. Known as a defensive genius, Landry switched roles and invented the motion offense to help our number 5 worst team score.
He did everything that he could do to hide our inadequacy of talent.
The greatest combination, offense-defensive mind the game has ever seen.
Although it took some time for the players to catch on, within a few years, the Cowboys became one of the highest-scoring teams in the league. The lone bright spot of the 1960 campaign was a 31-31 tie with the mighty New York Giants, Landry's former team.
I wanted to beat him.
He knew us better than we knew ourselves. We're playing his defense.
I knew I could attack the defense because I knew what their keys were and everything that they were going to do. And, of course, that did give us an advantage. We scored 31 points, which was probably more than we scored all year.
Our number 5 worst team eventually shook their expansion label. During Landry's tenure, the Cowboys made 18 playoff appearances and won 2 Super Bowls, earning the title of America's team.
The number 4 worst team of all time, the Bengals of the 90s.
Number 4. During the 1980s, the Bengals had plenty to celebrate by making 2 trips to the Super Bowl. But during the 90s, the franchise sailed way off course. They were so bad for the entire decade, we just couldn't pick one team. So we chose them all.
Under pressure, he's going to get sacked. He throws an interception with his left hand.
What a catastrophe.
I'm going to go for it on 4th down. We're 2 and 7. What the difference does it make?
It's 4th and goal from the 1. Getting to Dillon. They say they mark him down at the 1.
Wow. It's the type of team, you know, when you play San Jose State and USC, you bury them.
Opponents had every reason to take the Bengals lightly. Beginning in 1991, our number 4 worst team didn't post a winning record for 14 consecutive seasons.
It's almost like a dark cloud was following the franchise around. They just couldn't find their way out of the storm. It was amazing.
The Bengals were known affectionately, thanks to Myron Cope, as the Bungles.
They're not a bungle. Laying a hand on them.
But the Bungles were aptly named.
They had no clue. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know what to do. It was terrible.
One of the biggest mistakes the Bengals made was hiring Dave Shula over a future Super Bowl winning head coach.
Came down to Bill Cowher or Dave Shula. According to the legend, people around the league said Dave Shula might be a better way to go. Well, obviously, that wasn't the case. I think Mike Brown felt comfortable going with Dave Shula because he lived in a big shadow of Don. Mike lived in a big shadow of Paul. So there was almost like a kindred spirit there.
He had a 19-52 record as a head coach. He has an exit press conference. What the hell for?
You tell me that that football team that went out there Sunday to San Francisco wasn't ready to win a football game, I'd call you a liar.
The Cincinnati Bengals select David Klingler, Kajana Carter, Achilles Smith, Peter Warrick.
Terrible drafts. They were afraid to make a decision because everyone seemed to be wrong.
When it came time to pick, the New Orleans Saints offered all 7 draft picks. They said, Achilles Smith's our man, we're going to draft him anyway. And it was the biggest mistake in franchise history.
The Bengals' decade of futility makes them more than deserving of the number 4 spot on our countdown.
They will take it. No, the football out of bounds. What the heck?
The Bengals in the 90s, for a coach or a player, it was a sentence.
The ability to move the chains can make or break a team. Over the years, there have been plenty of inept offenses. For the 1942 Lions, the band members were the only ones marching downfield. These feckless felines scored 38 points the entire season.
That was right out of Marx Brothers right there.
The 2007 Dolphins managed just 16 points a game and didn't manage a win until Week 15, their only victory of the season.
Got time over the middle. Camarillo's got it. He may go the defense. The Bobby Dolphins.
The number 3 worst team of all time, the 1972-73 Oilers.
The next week, the Patriots travel to Houston and the Astrodome, where the Patriots defense had a field day working over the Oilers.
During the early 70s, everyone beat up on the Houston Oilers. In 1972, they scored the fewest points in the AFC. Houston also endured an 18-game losing streak that spanned the 72 and 73 seasons.
1-13, 2 years in a row. There's no way possible, but it happened. I was there.
It was not the best of times, and I was wondering maybe I should have signed that baseball contract out of high school with the Mets.
Hell, they're just hitting him after the damn ball's thrown. No, that's not right. He's got parents. Hell's bells. He's a human being.
During a blowout loss on Monday Night Football, a fan showed the nation how Houston felt about its lousy team.
The dome was almost empty, and the camera was going around to the stands, and this one guy was sleeping like that. And when he woke up, saw the red light on, and he gave him the finger. And
They're number one in the nation.
To me, epitomized every bad team that the Houston Oilers had through the decade.
Fans weren't the only ones who showed their disdain for the Oilers. Even the highlights spewed negativity. The ringleader during the crisis was Bill Peterson, a coach who had a reputation for turning struggling college programs around.
He had had great success at Florida State, but he came to Houston. It was almost as if Pete was intimidated by the NFL.
Well, where is the scoreboard?
Had no idea of how to put a game plan together, or really anything. I mean, it was really a mess.
Let's think of this now in the next situation. Let's go third down punt.
Master of the malaprop, he would tell the players to stand on their helmets with the sidelines under their arm. How do you inspire players when you can't get the words out of your mouth correctly?
If you think for one damn minute I'm going to take a loss standing down, you just have another thought coming.
We had a prayer act before the game, and he bowed his head, and everybody bowed their head, and he says, "Now lay me down to sleep."
The biggest joke I've ever been involved with in my life. To this day, I don't know how he got a coaching job here.
We're going out there this first half, and we're going to explode like a bomb.
Blowing up the #3 worst team of all time would have been an excellent idea, but in the end, they probably would have loused that up too.
Those were ugly years, years I don't want to ever repeat, but they found out what character you had.
It's hard to forget the greatest teams of all time.
The Dolphins have completed the greatest season in NFL history.
But some of the worst are often overlooked.
Wow.
During World War II, the Chicago Cardinals lost 19 consecutive games.
Of course, the pass was overthrown.
In the early 60s, the Redskins mascot hit his mark more often than quarterback Norm Snead, as they went winless in 23 straight games. Then there's the 1952 Dallas Texans, who started the year 0-9. Like their defense, the team folded by mid-season, literally.
The team folded during the middle of the year, and we got our checks, and Jimmy Phelan, who's our coach, he called practice and everything off, so I could go down to the bank and cash your checks before they all start bouncing.
Though our #2 worst team never folded, they probably wish they had.
Your #2 worst team of all time, the expansion Buccaneers.
#2.
I don't think anybody's going to make the Olympic team on this squad at this time.
When the expansion Tampa Bay Buccaneers reported to training camp in 1976, the lack of talent was immediately apparent.
It's all right. You had to catch his mid, you'd have caught it.
If you remember back in '76 when they were expanding teams, they had this allocation draft of basically a bunch of stiffs.
You had to pick up guys that was walking the street and driving trucks and working at the gas station.
John McKay looked at what he had, and he thought his USC teams could have beaten what he had, and he was probably right.
Even before Tampa Bay's first game, there were ominous signs of things to come.
The Bucs' first game was at Houston in the Astrodome.
Well, locker room, they came out and they took a wrong turn. They started walking away from the field down the tunnel.
So they kept walking and walking and walking.
They're wondering when they're going to get to the tunnel that will lead them onto the field.
About 5 minutes in, some guy from the Bucs says, "We're going the wrong way." Now that is a prophetic statement, if you ask me.
You see my watch? It's been the only consistent Buccaneer since they were born. It's never stopped running.
The Buccaneers were consistently bad. Tampa Bay began its existence by losing their first 26 games in a row, an all-time record.
You can't stop a pass or a run. Otherwise, we're in great shape. Well, these guys are almost gutless, and the ones that aren't that are brainless. What's wrong with playing Mon in the game? He tackles.
I used to carry a thesaurus with me on trip because I had used every adjective and description of losing that I could think of.
In 1976, the offense was so bad, they finished with more players on injured reserve, 17, than touchdowns, 15.
I mean, we're talking about 5 first down, 6 for the game. They scored a touchdown. It was a reason to throw a parade.
McKay was asked, what do you think about your offense's execution? I'm all for it.
The only thing more embarrassing than the offense was our number 2 worst team's uniforms.
The correct term that everyone has talked about is creamsicle. So if you can imagine a bunch of good humor bars running onto the field, it probably wasn't very intimidating.
Anybody that had to put on those ugly uniforms, how in the hell can you play football? They look like 47 pumpkins out there.
The real tipping point of the whole deal was the Buccaneer on the side of the emblem with the wink.
He didn't look too frightful. He was supposed to be a swashbuckler, but he looked like a happy fellow on the side of the helmet.
On December 11th, 1977, it finally happened.
The Bucs won their first game, but legend has it that Tampa Bay received some added motivation from the Saints.
Archie Manning allegedly said it would be a disgrace to lose to the Bucs. Archie Manning to this day disputes that.
Whether it was a ruse by McKay to get the team fired up, maybe he saw that was their last hope to get a victory after 2 arduous seasons.
Regardless of what he said, they lit a fire under the Bucs, and it continued onto the field. Hank Stram certainly knew that it was a dark day for the New Orleans Saints and a dark day for him, and he was soon fired.
What we should do is go down and get their champagne. But we'll drink our beer.
And now, the number 1 worst team of all time, the 2008 Lions.
The record speaks for itself.
Can't argue with 0-16.
That's as bad as you can possibly get.
They were pathetic.
An embarrassment.
Hard to stomach.
They're the worst team in NFL history.
In 1978, the NFL switched to a 16-game season, and 30 years later, the Detroit Lions became the first team to lose every one.
I'd hate to be the guy putting together the Lions highlight film. We're going to show the punter and the field goal kicker.
There's no sugarcoating this football team.
We need 4 touchdowns in 12 minutes. So the Lions go to Atlanta for their season opener. They're playing what's supposed to be a bad team with a rookie quarterback. And boom.
Ryan going to throw first professional pass. Caught! Jenkins, touchdown! That's how you do it. Wow!
They went on the road to San Francisco against Mike Martz, the coordinator who they had fired, and against J.T. O'Sullivan, who they had cut, and O'Sullivan and Martz carved him up.
That would just be called too easy.
The one that's going to get replayed forever is Dan Orlovsky running out of the back of the end zone.
Ran out of bounds. That's a safety.
He was able to laugh about it during the year, but unfortunately for him, that's going to be the signature moment.
I know Dan Orlovsky's never started an NFL game, but how do you run 3 yards out of the end zone like that and not even know it?
Detroit's a depressing city to begin with, and then you got the Lions go 0-16. Oof.
This was a team that just accepted its destiny as perhaps the worst team ever in professional sports.
There's nothing going right for them offensively or defensively.
They got to the point where people in Detroit were ashamed of them.
I think that they were resigned to the fact that this was a horrible football team, and that's the way it was going to be.
Thanksgiving Day is going to stick out in a lot of people's minds.
Everybody make sure they get a piece of this lion we have it for Thanksgiving.
It's the one day a year we know we're on national TV.
Thanksgiving Day in downtown Detroit.
And they just pounded the Lions.
Touchdown! Titans! Keep it going. Not letting up. Hand off to Johnson. First down and more. 50 Lions territory at the 40. Gone. Thanksgiving, they twisted all in one, man.
That was the game where, it became a national joke. I mean, they were getting laughed at.
It was exciting that a team was going to go 0-16, so I kind of enjoyed it.
How can a franchise be that bad?
They obviously had a quarterback problem. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to win many games. But 0 games?
When you talk about defensive ineptitude, this was possibly the worst defensive team ever to play in the NFL.
While much of the blame for Detroit's offer went to head coach Rod Marinelli,
Coaches and players were all responsible.
one name seemed to grab the lion's share.
Matt Millen.
Matt Millen.
Matt Millen.
Matt Millen.
The former player and broadcaster was the team's president for 7 years.
you got a great opportunity to really be something.
Before being fired early in the 08 season.
He was in charge of building the team since 2001, and they couldn't win 30 games.
I think Matt Millen's big mistake was he did not bring in a personnel guy.
It was just a series of bad decisions.
Detroit Lions select Joey Harrington, Charles Rogers, Mike Williams.
If you want to blame people for the 0-16, number one by far with a bullet is Matt Millen. I mean, by far.
They were bad enough that I think there might be a parade in downtown Detroit now that they're number one on some list.
Despite Detroit's imperfect season, not everyone agrees they should be our number one worst team.
No, the worst team of all time was the 76 Buccaneers. They would have been 0-100.
That was an expansion franchise.
This was the Lions' 75th season.
They are the absolute worst because they accomplished the impossible.
I don't know if I'd make them as bad as, say, the early Tampa teams.
I kind of tend to think they weren't worse than the 76 Bucks.
It'd be a heck of a game.
0-16, that's it. End of story.
Horse manure, yep, okay.